calculating interest. Before directly proceeding to this, today you are expected, after this lesson, you are expected to calculate simple and compound interest. So before directly proceeding to this one, let's see some terminologies. While we are using these terminologies while we are calculating interest. So the terminologies are: one, principal. Principal, we use the symbol P for principal. What does this mean? Principal is it is a money borrowed or loaned, so or invested. The money, it's a money borrowed or invested. Invested is called principal. This is the first terminology. Second one, time. T. It is time length in which the money is borrowed or invested. Is the period. It's the length of period. It is the length of period in which the money is invested or borrowed. Now, third, interest. Interest. This is the extra money paid for the use of money. For example, if you deposit a money in a bank, the bank will pay you some amount of money for using your money. So that amount, we call it interest. So interest is the amount of, or is the extra money. The extra money paid for the use of money. For the use of money. Okay. Now, the next terminology is here. It is interest rate. Interest rate. We use the symbol R for this one, and we use I for interest. So interest rate it's a percentage in which the interest will be calculated. So interest rate is the percentage at which the interest will be calculated. That's it. And one more terminology is this: amount. We use capital letter A for amount. What does this mean? It is the sum of the principal or the money you invested plus interest together. We call this amount. So amount is the sum of principal and interest. Or simply we can write in this form: amount is given by P plus I, the principal, plus the interest gives you amount. You see it? Now, let's see example for this. Example. If 1,000 birr is deposited in a bank that pays 7% interest, 7% interest rate per year, then calculate or then find the following. Then find the interest at the end of the first year, at the end of the first year. Okay, so here let's try to find the terms in this statement. So here it says 1,000 birr is deposited. What does this 1,000 refers? This 1,000 is the principal, the money invested or the money borrowed. We call it the principal. Here 1,000 birr is deposited in a bank. Therefore, this one is a principal. So we use the symbol P for the principal. So P is equal to it is 1,000 birr. Okay, now next is deposit in a bank that pays 7% interest rate. So what does this 7% refers? It is the interest rate. So the interest rate here is 7% per year. It pays 7% per year. Okay, then find the interest at the end of the first year. So this money is deposited for 1 year period. So 1 year is this? It's a time period in which the money is deposited. The time period is this 1 year. So what will be simple interest? Find simple interest. Not only simple interest, we'll also try to find the amount. So how do we calculate this? Here, simply we calculate the interest by taking 7% of 1,000. Here it says the interest rate is 7% per year. So in 1 year, it pays you 7%. Therefore, the interest will be equal to, it is 7%. 7% of 1,000. So this means it is the product of the two. In 1 year, it pays you 7%. So 7% of 1,000 will be equal to this 7/100 of means times 1,000. So you have this. $2 by $2 cancel out. 7 times 10 is 70. Therefore, this will be the interest at the end of the first year. At the end of the first year, the bank pays you 70 birr in addition to the original 1,000 birr. So what will be the total amount at the end of the first year? The total amount at the end of the first year will be equal to, it is the original principal plus the interest earned in the first year. So this will be equal to, the principal is this 1,000 plus the interest is this 70. So together you will have 1070 birr. This will be the amount. So now we'll proceed to how to calculate simple interest for certain lengths of time. Here we just calculate for 1 year. What will be the interest if the length of the year is 3 or more? And what will be the formula to calculate the interest, simple interest? We'll proceed to that. Example 2. Before this, let's see this one, calculating the simple interest. Simple interest. Okay, what does this simple interest means? So here, simple interest is it's interest paid on original principal for the whole period of time. So interest is interest paid on original principal for the whole period. Okay, so here, simple interest, as you said, it is interest paid on only original principal. For the first year, we use original principal. For second year, you'll use original principal and so on. So the interest paid on original principal only, we call it simple interest. So let's see example for this one. Example 1. Calculate the simple interest on birr 2000. On birr 2000, deposit in a bank. Deposited on a bank that pays 10% per year. That pays simple interest 10% per year for deposit for 3 years. 3 years. How do we calculate the simple interest on this 2000 birr? It's deposited in a bank. The bank pays you 10% interest rate per year. And you deposit this 2000 birr for 3 years. So, to calculate this, the interest for each year is the same because it is calculated on original principal only. Therefore, here, let's try to calculate the interest. First year. On first year, the money deposited here is 2000. And the interest rate is 10%. So, the first year interest will be 10% of 2000. Therefore, 10% of 2000. Here, it is 10% means 10 over 100 times 2000. This zero cancel out. 20 times 10 is 200. So, the interest for the first year will be 200. So what will be the interest for second year? The interest for second year also it is the same. Since it is a simple interest, the interest will be paid on original principal only. Therefore, for second year, the principal the same. It is 2,000. And the interest rate is 10%. Therefore, the interest for the second year will be 10% of 2,000 as we calculated here. The interest for the second year will be also 2,000. How about the third year? Okay, the interest for third year, again, it will be calculated on original principal only. So the principal is 2,000 and the interest rate is 10%. So the interest for third year will be 10% of 2,000. It gives you 200, the same. So the interest throughout the year is the same. Therefore, the interest for total interest for the 3 years will be 2,000 plus 2,000 plus 2,000. You will have 200 plus 200 plus 200. This will be equal to 3 times 200. So you will have 600 birr. This will be the simple interest. By the way, to calculate simple interest, the interest for each year is the same. So simply you can use this equation to calculate the simple interest. To calculate simple interest, you can use this equation. I is equals to calculate this one, simply multiply P and R and then by the length of the period. As you can see here, principal times rate, principal times rates, principal times how many times? 3 times 3 PR. That means 3 is time. PR times 3 means times T. Therefore, simple interest will be equal to this given by this equation. Simply you multiply the principal, the interest rate, and time. So using this equation, if you wanted this one, you'll have this. So the simple interest will be equal to the principal is 2,000 times the interest rate is 10%. So here 10 over 100 times time is 3. The length of period is 3 times 3. Therefore, this will be equal to I is equal to, you can cancel 2 zeros here, 220 times 10 is 200. 200 times 3, you'll have 600. So this will be the final answer. So to calculate simple interest, you can use this equation, principal times rate times time. That's it. Now, we'll proceed to the next example. Example 2. Example 2. Calculate the simple interest. Simple interest on birr 5,000 deposited in a bank at a rate of 7%. At a rate of 7% for 3 years. Please, students, try this question. I'll give you 30 seconds for this. Have you tried the question? Very nice. Now, let's see the answer together. Here, solution. We are asked to calculate the simple interest. So, we are asked to find the simple interest on bill 5,000. So, this 5,000 is the money deposit in a bank. So, we call it principal. So, the principal is given. It is 5,000. Deposit in a bank. The bank pays you interest rate of 7%. So, the interest rate is 7%. This money will stay for 3 years in a bank. So the time period is 3. And we are asked to calculate the simple interest. So the simple interest is given by, as we derived the equation earlier, simply we can use this equation. Simple interest is equal to PRT. So this will be equal to the principal is 5,000. It is 5,000 times the interest rate is 7%, 7 over 100 times time period is 3 times 3. Okay, so you can cancel these two zeros and you will have this. 50 times 7 is this 350 times 3. Let's multiply these two. 350 times 3, 3 times 0, 0. 3 times 5 is this 15, 1 times. 3 times 3 is 19. So the product of the two will be it is 1,050 birr. So this is how to calculate the simple interest. And if we are asked to calculate the amount, as we said earlier, the amount will be given by the original principal plus the money earned or the interest earned. Therefore, this will be the original principal. Here it is 5,000 plus the interest paid. Here it is 1,050. The sum of these two will be 6,050 birr will be the accumulated amount at the end of third year. Now, let's see another example. Example: how long will it take? How long will it take for birr 2,000 to double itself? To double itself. If it is deposited in a bank, if it is deposited in a bank that pays 10% simple interest. Per year is a question. So how long will it take for this 2,000 birr to double itself? If it is deposited in a bank that pays 10% simple interest per year. So in this question, the money deposited is given here. It's the principal. The principal is given. It is 2,000. Again, in this question, the interest is also given. Here it says, how long will it take for this period to double itself? Means the interest is also 2,000. You earn again 2,000 to W itself, means the interest is the principal itself. So the interest here is also, it is 2,000. It's deposited in bank. The bank pays the interest rate. It is 10% per year. So we are asked to find how long the time period is, how much. So using the simple interest equation, I is equal to PRT. So here the simple interest is given, it is 2,000. The principal is also, it is 2,000 times the simple interest is given, it is interest rate 10% times T. So we need to calculate T. Here, 2 zeros cancel out. And you have 2,000 is equal to 20 times 10 is 200. 200 T. To find T, divide both sides by 200. 200. This cancels out. T will be equal to 2 zeros cancel. 20 divided by 2 is 10 years will be the final answer. This is it. Now we'll proceed to how to calculate compound interest. Compound interest. Compound interest. In this case, this will be calculated, or the interest will be calculated, not only the original principal, but also previous year's interest. The interest also gives you an interest in this case, in the case of compound interest. So here, compound interest, this is the interest paid. The interest paid on original principal plus previous year's interest. Plus previous year's interest. So in this case, the interest also gives you an interest. So how do you calculate this? Let's see this through example. Example 1. Calculate the compound interest. Compound interest on bear 1,000 deposited in a bank that pays you, that pays interest rate of 10% per year. Deposited for 3 years. Calculate the compound interest over this. Deposit in a bank that pays you interest rate of 10% per year. Deposit for 3 years. Deposited for 3 years. Okay. Now, how do you calculate this? Now, in this case, since the principal varies from year to year, you have to calculate the interest for each year. Let's start from the first year. Okay, here, first year. On first year, let's say the principal first year, P1, if the money initially deposited is how much? It's 1,000. Okay. How about the interest rate? It is 10% per year. Now, I can calculate the interest for this year. The interest for the first year is this 10% of the deposited amount. So, I1, the interest for first year will be this 10%. 10% of 1,000. Therefore, this gives us 10% means 10 over 100 times 1,000. These two zeros cancel out. 10 times 10 is 100. Therefore, this will be the interest for the first year. On the second year, this interest also gives you an interest. So, the principal will change every year. So, on second year, the principal is not 1,000. It is the sum of 1,000 and 100. So, the sum of these two will be the principal for second year. Therefore, the principal for second year is this 1,000 plus 100 is 1,100. So, this is the money that gives you an interest for second year. So, the rate is the same. It is 10%. The interest for second year will be 10% of this principal. That is 1,100. So here, 10%, it is 10 over 100 times 1,100. Therefore, these two zeros cancel out 11 times 10 is 110. This will be the interest for second year. Now let's proceed. For third year, the money that gives you an interest is not only this one, 1,100. On this money, you have earned an interest of this, 110. Together, these two gives you an interest for third year. Therefore, the interest will be calculated, or the principal for third year will be, it is 1,100 plus 110. Therefore, this gives you, it is 1,210. So, this is the money that gives you an interest for third period. So, the rate is this constant, it is 10%. And I can calculate the third year's interest. It is 10% of this. It is 10% of 1,210. So, I3 will be equal to 10 over 100 times 1,210. So, I can cancel this 0 and 0 by 0, and you have 121. Therefore, the third year's interest will be this 121. So, finally, the total interest throughout 3 years will be the sum of this interest. So, I will be equal to, it is I1 plus I2 plus I3. So, the first year's interest is this 100. Second year's interest is this 110. And the third year's interest is this 121. Together, this gives us the sum will be 331. So, 331 will be the compound interest throughout 3 years. So, what will be the amount at the end of third year? The amount will be this interest plus the original principal. The original principal is how much? It is It's 1,000. Initially, he deposits 1,000 and you earned 331. So the 3 years, so the sum of the two will be 1,331 will be the amount or the accumulated amount you will have at the bank at the end of third year. So this is all about today's lesson. I'll give you exercise for you to try it home. Exercise 1. Calculate the simple interest on bear 4,200 deposited in a bank for 4 years. That pays you interest rate of an interest rate of 7% per year. Okay, it's the first question. Second question, calculate the compound interest. Calculate the compound interest on bear 4,000 deposits in a bank for 3 years. That pays your 10% interest rate per year, 10% per year. So please, students, copy the question. I'll give you 1 minute to copy the question and try the question at home. This is all about today's lesson. Until next lesson, goodbye.